Hello, I'm Marcus Louth, and welcome to the ANOM-ON-ONE show, the show where we speak in depth with various paranormal researchers and investigators from the paranormal and anomalous world. And our guest this evening is none other than friend of the Anomaly Project, researcher, lecturer, and founder of Strange Phenomena Investigations, Malcolm Robinson. Malcolm, thank you very much for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Marcus. It's nice to be back on your show and nice to see you're still keeping up the good work. So fantastic, great.
So we're looking forward to speaking with you. And normally on these sort of situations, Malcolm, I kind of, I like to not start at the beginning and start somewhere completely random. But I think in this case, it's appropriate to start at the beginning, to be honest with you, because you've had numerous, instances and things from your childhood that have kind of set you on the course you've ended up on, including where you were born. And that's probably a great place to start. So if you can speak to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about today's show is the fact that I'm getting an opportunity for the first time ever to really let the viewers know about me, about the person. Yes, we can scratch the surface with some of this the UFO and paranormal stuff, but I'd like to kind of let the audience learn a wee bit more about me. So let's start, as you said, at the very, very beginning, and that was way back on May the 1st, 1957. And I was born in a castle, would you believe?
Right.
It's Airtree Castle in the grounds of Stirling University in central Scotland. Now, it's not any airy-fairy birth in a castle. The reason why myself and others were born in a castle was that they were building the new infirmary at Stirling. So for a period of time, all these kids, for about 6 months or so, went to Airtree Castle where, well, the mothers were, and they were born. So it's always a good wee thing to say, I was born in a castle.
Yeah.
And not many people can say that.
No, absolutely. I mean, it just off the cuff there. Do you think, I don't know if you ever given any thought to this, but do you think the fact that you were born in the castle and given that, these old buildings would have undoubtedly absorbed so much energy, do you think that might have had an effect on you subconsciously, or is it something that you just think is inconsequential?
It's probably inconsequential, but again, who knows, about 5, 6 years ago, I went back with some friends to Airtree Castle, and somebody let us in, and of course I couldn't remember anything about it, any of the rooms, nothing looked familiar, because obviously I was just born, but it was great just to look around this magical building, so many years later, and it was just great to go back and just see it. And it's very little's changed, very little's changed at all.
Yeah, it's like you say, it's certainly an interesting start to life, and not everyone can claim that. As you went to school, as you go up, you started to become interested in things like I say that almost set you on the path that you went on. Can you speak to me a little bit about that? What kind of started to grab your attention, and what were the catalysts on?
Well, yeah, like any researcher you'll speak on this show, they're always a catalyst. They're always something that starts that person on their journey, and that was the case with me. I think it was at primary school, and I've said this before, but I was at primary school. I'd be about 5 or 6 years of age, and they were giving the class an easy reader to read. And this little book was called, in fact, I've got it in my bookcase over there. It was, I must have stolen it with the school. And the book title was called The Man from Mars. And it was about these two school kids bunking off school and just going for a jolly in the woods. And they come across a crashed flying saucer and they find a strange alien creature. And they went on journeys into space and everything. And again, this book captivated my mind, as I'm sure it did my fellow classmates. But for me personally, it captivated my mind into all things outworld. And since then, it's kind of been a journey I've been on for many, many times before. But in that primary school, I did have an imaginative frame of mind, striking my words out, frame of mind, because I thought there were fairies at the bottom of the garden, there were magical caves in this range of hills about a couple of miles away from where I lived. There was a range of hills known as the Ocho Hills. And I remember bunking off school, probably be the latter stages of the primary school, with some classmates, because I said to them, there was this cave. It was a magical cave, and you pull back a rock and you fall into this wonderful, serene land of mysticism and fairies and elves and all that. Oh, they thought this was great. So, I mean, whilst I was making it up, the cave was real because I had been there before. So we booked off school. We walked a good 2 mile and then climbed up this hill, and I found this cave, and we scrambled up because it wasn't on flat land. You had to go up some rocky precipice, and we climbed up, and it only went in about 6 or 7 feet, Marcus, and so we all huddled in this cave, and they're all going, right, what happens now? I says, well, and I knew I was like caught now. So I put my hand on this rock, and I says, well, it doesn't appear to be working. Maybe something's stopping this. The magic's not happening today. So they took that at face value, and we went back to, I think we went back to school actually, and just before it closed. And of course, we got reprimanded by the teacher, and I got blamed for taking these kids away in this magical journey. So even then, this is what we're trying to say to your good self and your viewers and your listeners. Even then, as a young boy, the strangeness, the mysticism of all this weirdness was still there. So it was wonderful, yeah.
Yeah, it's like you say. I mean, kids, certainly I did, and you did, have overactive imaginations. And it's an interesting state of mind because while you're pretending, and you're pretending, you're almost caught up in it as well. It is a strange state of mind. So with that in mind, I mean, we were communicating before the show. You mentioned that you kind of made a makeshift Ouija board, and I guess that kind of leads straight into that, really. Tell me a bit about that, because that's certainly an overactive imagination.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I'm trying to recall through the mist of time how that came about. Where did I get this idea from the Ouija board? And it wasn't a proper John Waddington's Ouija board, which you used to buy in the 60s and 70s. This was a makeshift, just letters, the alphabet letters, yes and no, and we had a glass tumbler, if I remember correctly. And so we had that in my bedroom in Tullabuddy in Clackmannanshire. And I think I was probably doing it with my younger brother. And we're sitting in the semi-darkness, with the fingers on this glass, asking the spirit. I mean, it's unbelievable, that I'm talking about. What age would I be then? Maybe 11, 12 or something like that. And they're asking us to move. And then we heard the footsteps coming up the stair. It was my mother. And she opens the door. What are you doing? Stop that at once, and she's moved all the letters off the table and that. And so we got kind of reprimanded from that. But again, it's great to share these early stories because I very, very, very rarely share these stuff on shows because it's good for your viewers to know, how did I get involved in this? How did I start on all this, And rather than maybe chasing girls or going out my push bike, a rally chopper, by the way, I started to look for ghosts and everything. So I was an early precursor as to what I do today.
Well, just out of interest there, what was your mother's main concern? Was it just that you were up late and you should have been in bed, or is it what you were actually doing, or a bit of both,
I think it was probably we were up late. I think she put us to bed and she must have heard the noise and the laughter or something, and they're not sleeping. My kids are not sleeping. So up she comes, And so yeah, that was quite funny looking back on it. But it's great memories, though, Marcus. Great memories,
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, like you say, all this stuff comes from somewhere, and we're going to move on to you introduced to spirituality at a young age too. But just to stay on influence for a while. I mean, I was speaking to another researcher, and he was saying we were a similar age, and he was saying in the 80s and 90s we had things like V, Star Wars, X-Files later on. What sort of stuff were you watching, back in the day? Because I mean, there was a lot of sci-fi around then, if I understand correctly.
Aye, back in the war, during the war. No, I mean, seriously, obviously there was only about 3 channels on when I was a lad, BBC One, ITV1, and I think BBC Two. Channel 4 and Channel 5 came later, and when that broke the mold, we're all, wow, this is great. But at that time, because there are only so many channels on, only 3 channels, Sky was not invented. Well, it wasn't there. And we were watching movies coming from America, like The Day the Earth Stood Still, War of the Worlds, Invaders from Mars. And again, these movies captivated my young, inquiring mind as I sat on the couch watching Robbie the Robot on, all these movies, Forbidden Planet and stuff. And of course, preceding that, of course, you had Star Trek, you had the Twilight Zone, you had all these fantastic shows coming from America. And that, again, was a kind of grounding for me. But, there's a magazine I came about. Somebody gave me this magazine, and I've never, ever, ever mentioned this anywhere in my life until tonight, is somebody gave me a magazine called Fate, Fate, a small A5 publication. Goodness knows where I got that from. Maybe I was shown an interest, and one of the family members says, here, have a look at this.
Right.
And I poured through this, Marcus. And again, as you know, for any viewers that's not aware of this magazine, it is a magazine on Forteana. In other words, you know, UFOs, ghost poltergeist, cryptozoology. The full works was in this magazine. And I've never mentioned, I'm surprised I've never mentioned this. That, again, was like putting petrol in a car. Wolf, you can go now. Right. This is great stuff, you know. So, yeah, it was all that, yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Like you say, when you come across stuff for the first time. I mentioned there about spirituality, and you know, I know that you was introduced into that world, if you like, or that not belief system, but that way of looking at the world at an early age. So, if you could tell me a little bit about that, but also how did that fit in with this other side that we've just been speaking about, or did it not? Were they two separate trains of thought?
I think it probably was two separate trains of thought, in the sense that when I was taken to Sunday school, you know, religion was a big part, not a massive part, but it was a big part of family life, the Sunday school, learning about Jesus, etc. And this was before I learned about, you know, these movies and UFOs, etc. So I wasn't aware of all this, but I was aware that they wanted me to go to Sunday school to learn the teachings of Jesus and that. So I remember going in my wee shorts, you know, and taken to Sunday school and singing songs and all the rest of it. And I remember I won a prize, a little tiny wee Bible, because the teacher had asked the class a question about Jesus. And everybody was quiet, bar me, stupid me, yeah. I've got the answer, miss. And of course the answer was correct, so I got this. So as I moved on throughout the course of my life, obviously getting older and learning about the true spirituality, I've come to learn that there's a place for everything. There's a place for Buddha, there's a place for Krishna, there's a place for Jesus. And but as you probably know, my heart lies in spiritualism. I'm a spiritualist. It's not a case of I believe in life after death. The evidence is overwhelming. Yeah. Over all 45 years of research, speaking to clinical physicians and so many people, yes, as I've said before, yes, there's a lot of nonsense out there, but the evidence for continuity after physical material death is, by God, it's overwhelming. But getting back to the main point, your question was a wee boy growing up in Scotland, all about Jesus, which was fine, which was good, you know, because you're learning, in a sense, right from wrong. You're learning, you know, the laws, is, for want of a better word, of the world. And there was nothing matter with that. I'm a Protestant by religion. I'm not a practicing Protestant. You know, I go to a spiritualist church. But so religion does play a big part in my life, but it's a spiritualist religion now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely, it's something that I'm starting to explore a lot more. So that does interest me, the spiritual side of things. How does that spiritualist belief, again, slightly, how I asked you before, how does that intertwine with your paranormal research? You know, how does it intertwine, if indeed it does?
Well, we had a discussion on the SBI Messenger chat group about holy water. We work with a fantastic psychic medium. He's been on your show, Stephen Bird.
Yeah.
Wonderful guy, wonderful gifted psychic. So the question I was posing on the Messenger chat was, maybe we should use holy water. And for anybody of a household who's problems with ghosts, you know, it's another tool that we can use to let them see we are serious. We want to get rid of this. And of course, Stephen quite rightly says, you don't really need that. All you need is me to shift the ghost on. So we were tete-a-tete back and forward and saying that, well, maybe the householder wants to see that. Maybe the householder would like the best of two worlds. The psychic side, where you're getting rid of the ghosts, and the holy water being doused as well, with a number of prayers. So in a sense, to answer that question, it is a mix of both worlds here. You know, the spirituality, the holy water, and the fantastic mediumship of Stephen Bird. And there's definitely a case for it, because if it makes the householder feel more comfortable by splashing holy water over the house, then fine, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Placebo effects and things of that nature. I know we're kind of whizzing through here, but I mean, there's so much to cram in. So one more thing I want to touch on from your childhood is, and you've mentioned this in passing before with us on the Anomaly project, is, you took a trip up to Loch Ness with your family.
Yeah,
And, obviously that sparked your obsession with Nessie. And I think we'll speak a bit later on about, I believe you went down in a submarine to actually,
yeah,
go looking for this. So tell
yeah.
me a bit about that when you went to Loch Ness for the first time. How was that basically?
It's funny because kids back in the 50s and early 60s, they didn't have Game Boys and all the rest of it. And the television was, again, only three channels, so you hadn't much to look at. So we used to look forward to every summer holiday in Scotland. And point of fact, and truth be told, we did a lot of English holidays to Southport, Bridlington, Blackpool, etc. But we also did Scottish holidays. And when my parents took us for the very, very, very first time up to Loch Ness, I went, why do we want to go to a loch? It's just a loch, it's a body of water. And again, I'm trying to think, maybe 11, 12 years of age.
Yeah.
And then my father started to regale me with the tales of the Scottish water kelpie, this mythical beast that came out of the water and dragged unsuspecting people on shore to the inky, murky depths. And I was fascinated by this, if not a little scared. And he says, "Oh, it's not going to harm you. We'll be camping up there and stuff like that. I'll be fine." So we went up to Loch Ness. In actual fact, we went to Bauchpark, Bauchgt in Inverness. And then we took the car up to Loch Ness. And as soon as I saw the place, Marcus, I was gone. I was like, wow, this is for me. Looking up the body of that 24-mile loch, the serenity of it all, the beauty of the hillside, the beauty of the heather, and the stories that my father told me was wow. And what made it even so better was we went on a pleasure cruiser. These boats that traverse up and down.
Yeah.
And I remember I had my father's binoculars. And I was so excited, so excited. And I'm scanning the loch surface, and I swear I saw three humps. I
Right.
did. And this was at the front of the boat. And I ran back to the back of the boat. I don't know my stern from about. Ran to the back of the boat where my father and mother was sitting. I went, I saw an Essie. And of course, all the holiday makers are going, that wee boy saw an Essie. So they all ran to the front of the boat. Now, what I think now, and I'm a lot older, of course, I do believe what I saw was what's known as standing waves. And what that is, you've got a boat traversing south, a boat traversing north, and as they push the water, it creates this standing wave. And I think that's probably what I saw. But getting back to Loch Ness, that was, again, so I'm listening and watching these movies from America, the Star Trek, the Twilight Zone. I've started to read Fate magazine, the spirituality side's coming up. And now cryptozoologies came into the mix with Nessie.
Yeah.
I was on a roller coaster, Marcus. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, I can believe it. Like you say, it's just one thing after another almost. And at that age, you really are like a sponge. I mean, I'd like to jump forward a little bit because we're going to come back to like you love of music and things of that nature in a moment. But as I mentioned, like, you did take a submarine below Loch Ness. I think you were the first person to do this. So first of all, how was that? And second, the little boy must have come rushing back up to the surface when you were doing this because of everything you've just mentioned about that first time there.
Yeah, the submarine was later years in 1994.
Yeah.
And what it was, they were taking a 15 to 20 foot submersible into the murky depths of Loch Ness on research purposes. Now, what I mean by that was they were doing core samples of the loch floor. So it was like a big pipe drilled into the loch floor, and then it comes back out. And when you open that pipe up, you've got all the different sedimentary lines,
Right.
just like an oak tree. Cut a tree down all the rings, the same with the sediments. And that gave the scientists an understanding. And we actually had fallout from Chernobyl, which settled across the Scottish sides and drifted through the waters. And even that was found in the bottom of Loch Ness. So they were taking members of the public down in this submarine for £68.50 to help fund the work that we're doing. And I think it was only there a few weeks. So I had to do this, Marcus.
Yeah.
I had to do it, So I went up to Loch Ness, I met the skipper, and I was so excited. And I went into this submersible, and I say it was only about 15 feet long or so, and there were condensation running down the sides. There were dials, there were sockets, there were everything all in the sides of the submarine. And the front of the submarine was a toughened glass portal. And above that was 7 or 8 very strong, powerful halogen lights. They penetrate into the depths of Loch Ness. There was also a portal on the floor of the submarine as well. I took my video camera with me then, a big bulky thing back in the day, 1994. And that footage can be found on YouTube. So anyway, we went down to a depth of over 500 feet or so, I can't remember now. And whilst we were doing that, the submarine captain was talking to us about the work that they were doing at Loch Ness, you know, and then suddenly the loch floor just fell away because we were at an angle. And I said to the skipper, "Can we go down there?" He says, "No, we've got to stick to an allotted course." And so it was probably one of the best experiences of my life. It was the best £68.50 I've ever spent in my life, you know, but yeah, don't tell wife that.
I can imagine that is like another worldly experience. We'll come on to some of your other paranormal stuff later on in the show, but just to rewind back a little bit, then back to when you were younger. And I find this quite fascinating as well, the number of paranormal researchers who have a background in music. And I believe music was a big part of your youth. Can you speak to me a little bit about that?
Oh, Marcus, music was a massive part of my life growing up. It really was. And there came a point in my life I was either going left with the music or right with the paranormal, and I had to decide. But let's talk about the music. Yeah, growing up, whilst I was watching all these wonderful sci-fi movies, I was also given this horrendous Spanish guitar, out-of-tune guitar, and I managed to tune it. And I started learning the guitar. Now, my Uncle Les, he was a country and western singer in Scotland. Very, very popular man. He's passed his spirit now, bless him. And he did all the clubs in Scotland. He was very big in Cyprus. I don't know why Cyprus. He was bigger in Cyprus in Scotland. And he had hit records a lot, TV shows. So he showed me how to play guitar, the chord structure from D, from A7, from G, the open chords to the bar chords. Bar four chords will make it more fuller sound. And I thought this was great. So I started to write songs in my bedroom, and then I met a chap called Sandy Craw, and through our love for the Beatles. And my introduction to Sandy Craw was on a football field, and he really done a terrible tackle to me.
Right.
I was a good 10 feet up in the air. And anyway, him and I became friends. He was a guitarist. He loved songs. He loved Beatles. So we joined forces. And instead of chasing girls at 14 and 15 years of age, forget that. Let's play songs. And that's all we did. We were in our bedroom writing songs. We were like John and Paul, facing each other. The lights were out. A wee 1 bar electric fire on the carpet, and just trying to write. What's that chord? Right, you do that. I'll do that. And we did backing tracks. We had the old dance set recorders, and about that size, and with the little kind of cassettes. You popped it in. And we did some backing tracks, no singing. And then we played that, and then on another cassette, we did the singing and played again. So it was double tracking. And we loved that, you know. And the thing about that is, in later years, I played in a band, and we played at Alloa Town Hall. And we were on the stage, and a guy called Alan Longmuir from the Bay City Rollers had left the Rollers. He was a drummer. And he had left the Rollers because of his age, or something about 30 odd or something, which is nothing. And so he wanted to go solo, and he had made a solo record. So Alan Longmuir came on the stage at Alloa Town Hall. We had finished a song, and Alan was going to sign an album. And at that point, this little girl, 16, 17, rushed along the floor, jumped up a good 6 feet on, because the stage at the Alloa Town Hall was quite raised. Got her hands up, pulled herself up, and started kissing Alan Longmuir. It was hilarious, you know. And I always remember that. And at that time, when I supported Hibs, and we'll come to these stories shortly, I had my Hibs scarf hanging from my guitar, which didn't go down too well. with some of the cool cats in the audience, you know, because they thought green and white it would be Celtic. It wasn't. It was Hibs.
Right, of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. I mean, you mentioned that there's a bit of a story there with Alan Longmuir, isn't there? But, if you can tell me a little bit about that, I'll let you speak about it.
Yeah, sure. So that wasn't the first time I met Alan Longmuir, because the Bay City Rollers had houses across the Central Belt, and Alan Longmuir stayed in the town of Dollar, which is about 5 miles or so from where I live just now in Sauchie.
Right.
And I was roadieing for a local band, helping them in with the amplifiers and guitars. And I saw this guy standing at the door, and he had a drink in his hand, and I didn't know who he was. I said, "Could you get that door, mate?" "Yeah, mate, yeah." And he's holding the door for me to come in. I went, "You're Alan Longmuir." "Yes, that's right." So I sat Alan Longmuir down, and should never do this with a celebrity. I sat him down. I says, "Tell me about the Rollers. Tell me about the life." And rather than say, "Oh, no, I don't want to talk about that," him and I sat eye to eye, pint to pint, and boy, did I hear some stories about the Bay City Rollers.
Right.
So how to be a pop star. Jeez, oh.
That's a surreal situation to find yourself in. You mentioned it's obviously you played a lot while you were older as well. You progressed from just playing in your bedroom. I've played in loads of pubs, and I've been in that situation where you're playing to the other bands and the girlfriends. I'd imagine you've had much the same kind of situation that you've had to go through. So you can speak to me about that, Malcolm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always wanted to write songs, and I've written over 300 songs, and only 3 I would say is brilliant. Right. And I remember we were practicing in my friend's kitchen, all the places to practice in. Yeah. And we were practicing there, and I was doing one of my own songs called The Words I Say. And my friend's mother rushed into the kitchen. She says, "Oh, that's a lovely, is that the Beatles? That's such a good song." And everybody turned, "No, Malcolm wrote that." I felt very, very proud, you know. And so that was good, just doing that. And I remember we played in a band. We were practicing in a garage when I lived in Tullabuddy. Right. And we were doing Sunshine of Your Love by Cream, which is quite a heavy number. And the next thing, the police banged the door. So we opened the garage door, and there were 3 police officers there. And they says, "It's true, this is what he said." He says, "Who do you think you are? The bloody Beatles." You know, because the neighbours had complained because the volume was turned up. And even although you're in a wooden garage, that sound will penetrate that. That will go for miles, you know. Yeah. So, yeah, that was quite funny, yeah.
I wonder if you speak to me about, again, we spoke a little bit briefly before we came on air about the Hotel Pitlochry story. That's quite interesting, for our viewers to hear.
Yeah, I mean, after I made that decision, I'll give you another quick, for instance. Okay. It's part football story, because I was due for a band practice at the Endrick Hotel in Alloa, and I went off to see my favourite Scottish football team, Hibernian. Right. And so I didn't turn up to the band practice. So I went to watch my team. I came back to the hotel, and I felt a bit guilty. I better go and see the lads. And as I walked in, they were playing Fleetwood Mac's Albatross, which is a solo song, a very soft, slow song. And the stares I got, like, "You're not welcome here, Malcolm," you know. Right. And I kind of thought the writing was on the wall. And I didn't really want to be in a band anyway. I wanted to chase ghosts and UFOs. And so it was very amicable. But you asked about Pitlochry. So when I moved down to England, I came back to Scotland, on a regular basis, and I came up to see the guys. They were playing Fisher's Hotel in Pitlochry, very, very big hotel. And so we get up there in the transit van, sitting in the back of the van, you're falling all over the place. You've been in a band, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And you're on bumps and there you go, you're on bumps and bruises. So we get there, and I'm sitting in the audience and just watching the guys. Great, watch the guys. And then suddenly the lead singer of the band says, "Ladies and gentlemen, got a great surprise for you tonight. All the way from London, England, the wonderful Malcolm Robinson. He's been on TV, he's been on radio. Big hands together for Malcolm Robinson." And I go, "Malcolm who? Who? Never heard of him." And I thought this was hilarious. And I hadn't sung for years. So we went up and we did a song called "Nowhere Man" by the Beatles. And it's a 3-part harmony with John, Paul and George. So there was me, Stevie Taylor and Robert Ferguson He's a real Noel man, you know, going into the song.
Yeah.
And it went down okay. Although having said that, and as this is a true show and all the works and everything's coming out, on the way back in the van, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but on the way back in the van, I had so much to drink, I was going to be sick out the window. But the window wasn't open, it was closed. So,
Oh, no.
you know, so the van going back was not very fragrant.
It happens to the best of us, like you say, it really does. Malcolm, you mentioned there, you know, you've got a great love for Hibernian football team. This is probably like, you know, along with music, I'm guessing this was quite important to you, you know, growing up. So how did you get introduced to not football, but Hibernian particularly?
Well, I was at a loss one day. I was just a young boy, again, a teenager, 13, 14 or so. And I walked into Alloa. And at the old Alloa bus station, there was this big double-decker bus with an array of green and white scarves and flags and all that. Now, I thought it was like most people, I thought it was Glasgow Celtic because they also play in green and white. I've got nothing else to do. I'll jump on this bus and go. And it was a Hibs bus, which doesn't matter. I was wanting something to do. And so we went up to Edinburgh, which is the home of Hibernian at Easter Road. And we won that day. And I just loved the atmosphere with the crowds because prior to that, Marcus, I was supporting my local football team, Alloa Athletic. And they were in the Scottish Second Division at the time. And so this was the big boys. This is the big crowds and all that, you know. Yeah. And at that time, Hibernian were scoring about 5 goals or 6 goals every week. I kid you not. It may have been 5-1. It could have been 6-2. It was all. We had such a great team, you know. And so that's how I started supporting them. But obviously, supporting any football team when you're young and silly comes with its problems as well.
Well, yeah, I wonder if you could speak to me about that because you know you weren't just a passing supporter, were you? You know, you took a real interest in this team. So yeah, let me know because I understand it's a lifestyle in itself, isn't it? Basically,
it is, and this is what this program's all about, folks. It's for me the true Malcolm Robinson. Yes, you'll get some spooky stuff, but it's to hear about who's the guy behind the ghosts and that. Well, what happened was, and I'm being very truthful here, we had beat Glasgow Rangers 3-1 at Easter Road, and I was on a high. And back in those days, I was like a Christmas tree. I had a scarf there and a scarf there and a scarf around my neck. I had a big flag round my neck. And I walked into a chip shop in Edinburgh, which is our normal thing we did after a game. We go to we go to the match, go to the chip, get a bag of chips, go to the bus, go home. Goes into the chip shop. Solid of Glasgow Rangers fans, red, white and blue. And I walked in green and white. What do? Do I about turn with my tail behind my legs and go out? That would have been the best thing to do. No. I walked straight up to the counter. Fish supper, please. And you know when people are staring at you, Marcus, you know you feel it. And so I had to turn around. So I looked at this Rangers guy, and of course he said, "What are you looking at?" And next thing, they all jumped on me. Now, those were the days, I don't know, you're maybe too young to remember this, Marcus, but you used to get a pair of trousers known as Skinners, big white baggy trousers, famously on Madness videos. They were white, they had a high waistband and that. So they were all, and I'm lying on the deck, getting pummeled, you know. Now, because I had a good drink in me, I never felt a thing. And then, thankfully, one big Rangers fan, a big sturdy man, well, leave the boy alone, leave him alone. And he pulled me up and he says, get out of here. And he threw me out the chip shop. And I went on my merry way, but I felt it the following day, by God.
I can imagine. I mean, there's a few other stories. I mean, if I'm correct, you know, haven't you kind of ended up being arrested? Not necessarily because you're in the wrong, just because you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, it's a... Let me know about that because that's, again, interesting stuff.
With any football fan, you'll have a local rivalry. You have Everton, Liverpool, you know, Spurs, Arsenal and stuff like that. Well, in Edinburgh, it's Hibs and Hearts. Heart of Midlothian's the other Edinburgh team, and there's always an intense rivalry. And we beat Heart of Midlothian 7-0 back in 1971, I think it was. So a few years later, I made this big banner saying, hello, hello, it was 7 in a row. And in those days, this is honestly true, I don't know how this happened, there was no segregation. You could walk up to the Hearts End and that. So I walked up with this, hello, hello. It was 7 in a row. We beat you 7-0 to the Hearts fans. And the next thing, arms behind my back with the police officers. And I was taken underneath the stand. But as I was taken along the track side, the Alloa branch of Hibs supporters are going, look at Malky. And they're all going, yeah, you know. So, again, this is pre-1979 when I formed SPI. So we're talking the football years and the band years. And when I was taken into the stand, I was thrown up against the wall with this police officer, and he had a camera. He says, smile. So I stuck my tongue out and everything, you know. I wasn't going to smile for nobody. What's your name? John Smith. Where are you from? And I gave him this other false address because I thought I'd just get thrown out. You know, I've never been arrested before. And then he took us to the back of the stand and opened the door, and it was just the street behind the main stand. Quietness. It was like tumbleweed going along. Nobody there because they're all on the ground. Do you want to run, son? Pardon? Do you want to run? I thought better of it, Marcus. I says, if I run, I realised then that I ain't going home. I think I'm going to the cells. So we go into the police paddy wagon, as they called it back in the day. And then I said to one of the police officers, very sheepishly, I said, I've got a story to tell you. What's that? I didn't give you my right name and address. So, and I got taken to the cells, and there were a number of Hibs fans and other supporters in the cells, and we were all shouting at each other through the wee window thing, you know. And I remember I had to go on Monday morning. I was taken to Perth Sheriff Court, but below Perth Sheriff Court, it's like a dungeon. It's like, you know, that place, where is it? Oh, I forget the name of it. And it was like a dungeon. It was really horrible. And then you go up these wooden steps, and there's a wee latch. It's like a loft. You open that, and you're in this courtroom. Brass railings, men with wigs and all that. I went, oh, God almighty. And and my mother and father had to collect me after that. So that was... But, I mean, other things has happened as well. I was at a match with Hibs in St Johnstone at Muirton, Old Muirton Park. And there was fighting going on. Everybody was fighting about 30, 35 yards away from me. And I wasn't fighting. I was watching the game. Next thing, I'm getting lifted. I hadn't even done anything, you know. So, obviously, anybody who follows football watching this show will say, I can relate to that. I know somebody like that. That's life, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know we're talking about early 70s, late 60s here, but, you know, but I mean, even back in the 90s, you was always, right, we'll leave a few minutes before I end the game, do you know what I mean? And you'd be out of there. So I know exactly what you're saying. I wonder if you could tell me, what's the green pint story? Because that sounds really interesting. We've got to speak about this.
Yeah, the reason I mentioned about a green pint, being a Hibs supporter, our colours are green and white. So if we went, we were maybe playing Dundee United or Aberdeen or St Johnstone or any team really, I'd go into their local pub and order a green pint. What's a green pint? So it's Blue Balls liqueur. Pour that in first, then you put the lager on top of it, and as soon as the yellow lager hits the Blue Balls liqueur, it explodes into green, just like if you were painting. It tastes disgusting, honestly. It tastes horrible. And so you'd walk back to your seat with your Hibs friends, and maybe the Aberdeen fans are over there, and that boy's got a green pint here. Look at that boy. Just for show. That's all it was, just for show. But it tasted horrible.
All right. Like you say, it's all for show. Before we move on from football, we need to look at one more. What's the Kevin Keegan story all about, Malcolm?
Yeah, we played we played Liverpool in some UEFA Cup or back in the day, back in the 70s and stuff. And as Kevin Keegan was taking a throw-in from the side of the terracing, and all the Hibs fans were singing, Keegan wants his mummy. Keegan wants his mummy. And the reason we were singing that is because Kevin Keegan... This is terrible. Kevin Keegan's mother was ill, so he left the England camp to be with his mother. It's the right thing to do. The right thing to do. So we were all singing, Keegan wants his mammy, Keegan wants... And then suddenly, instead of taking the throw to his Liverpool teammates, he dropped the ball and he went like that to us Scots fans. He went 5-1. England had beat Scotland 5-1 at
Right.
Wembley. So he was rubbing her nose in it. And well done, Kevin. Good story. Yeah. Bugger.
Yeah, well, like you say, it's one of those things in it when you're on the terraces, you kind of see a weakness and you go for it. So I can understand that. Look, at this point, then, Malcolm, we're kind of like you mentioned. You started working basically. But were you working alongside investigating paranormal cases, or did you spend a few years in the workforce and then decide you wanted something more? How did that work?
Yeah, my first job when I left school, actually I finished school on the Friday
Right.
and I went to work on the Monday. That's how quick I was working. I was working with a company called Don Bros. It was a knitwear company in Alloa. And I worked with them for a short period of time. And from there I went to Peyton's Mill, which is another knitwear factory in Alloa.
Right.
Alloa was known for its knitwear factories, its coal mining, and also its brewing. We've got Skull Brewery and a number of breweries in Alloa. And this time, when I was there, I also worked for United Glass, and that's the manufacturer of whiskey bottles and beer bottles.
Oh, right, okay.
And at that point in my life, Marcus, people were beginning to see that I was into all this funny UFO stuff and the ghosty stuff. And I started it initially. I started to get ribbed mercilessly by my friends. Oh, you're off your head. There are no such things as ghosts. And then when they saw me doing a number of newspaper articles and radio shows, maybe there's something in this stuff. And so my workmates who once took the mickey out of me were coming to me with the news. Malcolm, have you seen this in the paper? Have you seen this? So they were actually coming forward with me, which I thought was really good because prior to that, as I say, you were getting ribbed mercilessly. But there is a story about that, funnily enough. And it was in my time when I worked at the glassworks. I may have said this in a previous show of yours. There was, apart from one guy, he was older, a lot older than me. He was ready for retirement. He says, Malcolm, you're off your head, son. There's no such things as ghosts and UFOs. Really, you need to see a doctor. You really need to be sorted out. And then he finished that line by saying, but I'll tell you what, Malcolm, when I die, and I hope, God forbid, it's not for many, many years, but see when I die, if there is such a thing as a life after death, I'll come back
Right.
and bloody well show you. Aye, okay, Bobby, right, son, no bother. So that conversation was well forgotten, and many, many years passed. And I was getting up for a 6 o'clock start, so I got up about 4:45 in the morning.
Right.
And the wife was sleeping up the stair, and the house is all quiet. And I walks downstairs, and I goes into the kitchen and puts the water in the kettle, and to make myself a cup of tea. And then I felt something. I felt something behind me. You're bound to have had that feeling where you feel somebody staring at you, or this and that. And I felt somebody was there. And I slowly turned round and I saw nothing. What happened? What was that? How did I feel? What was going on here? So here's where the story gets interesting. I went into my work and I went into the men's mess room where before I started a shift, you have a wee cup of tea before you go out on the shop floor. And all the guys are like this, Marcus. I went, come on, guys, cheer up, come on. Cheer up, boys. Oh, I guess you've no heard. Heard what? Wee Bobby Smith died last night. And that was a man years ago had said, if there is such a thing as a life after death, I'll come back. Now, I never saw Marcus, but by Christ, I felt something. I had no right to feel what I felt that morning. I was only making a normal cup of tea and going about my business, and then, wow, it was so strong a feeling. And God bless him, he came back. I'm sure he did.
I mean, would that correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm just, was that your first experience with the paranormal, hands-on experience with the paranormal, or had you had other things before that?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, as a wee boy growing up again, and it falls in prior to seeing the sci-fi shows. When we went down to Blackpool, the first thing I went to was the ghost train. Right. Oh boy, I love that ghost train. You know, you go in and all these strings are falling down your face and things jumping out of you. Sounds crazy, I know. Rather than go on the Big Dipper, which I did do, it was always a ghost train. Well, you get bloody off that ghost train, my parents used to say, you know. So that was the start of it as well. And then I was starting to read the fiction books on ghosts. I went, nah, Now I want to read the real stuff. I want to read the stuff. And I came along, Eric Van Daniken. I read the books of Jenny Randalls, Hilary Evans, and a whole range. Jean Cale, of course, Jacques Vallée, and all these wonderful, wonderful books. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Because even then, and I've said it before, I was still sceptical, Marcus, on all these subjects until I started to see things and hear things and speak to people who'd seen things, and I know they're telling the truth. That's when the mold shifted. That's when things changed, you know. And so it was these early experiences. And then I had a case where I used to live in a house in Bankery Place in Tullabuddy, and one of my friends got that house. He says, "You fancy coming back to my house now, Malcolm?" I went, "Aye, it is your house now." So we walked in, place is in darkness. The living room is in darkness. And everybody, there was lots of chairs around the room. And there was one man standing it was like a white, like an ice cream man or a doctor with a white coat. And somebody said, "Oh, that's that young Malcolm Robinson. He used to live here. He's got asthma. Maybe you could cure his asthma." And I'm going, "Cure my asthma? What's going on here?" I didn't know this guy was a psychic healer. Mm. So anyway, I went and sat in this chair. And I said, "William, my friend, what's going on, mate?" I was just a wee boy, you know. My mum's daft. She has all these friends round, spirits and all that, and they communicate with the dead. That boy's a healer and all that. I mean, he's not going to harm me, is he? He says no. So I sits in this chair and he put his hands above my head, and suddenly I felt as if you had a 2-bar electric fire and you put it against somebody's head. That intense heat. I went, "Whoa, whoa." And I fell off the stool, fell off the chair, fell on the floor. The thing that happened to me, Marcus, was I went blind. I know that's crazy. I lost my sight for a period of time, and then thankfully it came back. My asthma was semi-cured, but I was on medication, so I don't know if that did it. There was another occasion, my mother and father, who are in spirit, bless you, they were arguing. They very rarely argued, but they were arguing this time. And then suddenly, poof, I saw everything in negative. You know, these strips of film in the negative. Right. They were in negative. The room was in negative. I went, and I screamed out, and they stopped arguing. Went, "What is it, son?" I says, "Something's funny. The room's changing." And then I don't know where this came from. I says, "If there is a God, I won't cause any more problems to my mother and father." Yeah. And then suddenly everything's back in colour. And then there was another occasion where my mother, I was a very contemptuous boy. My mother had bought me this pair of black patented shoes. "There you go, son. There's a new pair of shoes for you." "I don't like them, Mother." "I paid a lot of money for them. I don't like them." So what I did, Marcus, was I threw the shoes down to a settee, which was facing against the front living room window. I swear to God, hand on heart, these shoes were definitely heading towards the couch, the settee. They didn't hit the couch. They sprang up. They stopped in midair, rose up vertically, and went smash through the living room window. Wow. Now, anybody viewing this might think, well, they bounced off the settee. They didn't bounce. They stopped in midair. My mother had walked away at this part, and she turned round because she heard the smashing of glass. Why did you do that? Why did you do that, Malcolm?" "I never." And I don't know where that come from. Why did that event happen? It was crazy, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly makes you contemplate whether, like you say, I know Steve Mayer, a colleague of the ANOM-ON-ONE project, goes on about this all the time. He mentions that you kind of guided almost by some force, and you kind of, he doesn't say that, but it's certainly it's interesting, as you say, because there's certainly something there and something made that happen. I wonder, could you tell me a bit about your time with the Hastings Observer? I mean, was that alongside your time? Did you move on then in your employment? And
yeah, I mean, obviously, I won't go into too many stories of why I left Scotland, but I did leave Scotland in 1998 right. To live and work in England. And I initially worked for the Hastings Observer. Just get my story. Is that right? No, well, I actually had a few jobs prior to that. Sorry, I'll start. I worked for a security company in Ealing in right. W5 as a security guard. And it was a terrible, horrible job. We stayed in this tiny, tiny room with tiny little black and white monitors, which were looking over a university and stuff like that. And twice of a night, it was a 12-hour shift, and I hate doing them. The guy had this, who I was working with, had a big set of keys. And there were hundreds of keys on this. And how do you know what key fits which door? I know. So we also were to inspect Ealing Studios, the famous Ealing Studios, which was pretty near where we were. So that was incredible to see all the props and everything lying there, and the sound stage. Wow, it's crazy. And so from there, I did a number of other jobs. But the Hastings Observer, I moved from London and I moved to a beautiful wee place called Hastings in East Sussex. I so miss it. I love it so much. And I applied for 2 jobs as soon as I got there. One was in a kind of a factory, and one was with a local newspaper, the Hastings Observer. And it's funny because when I walked down the stairs, there were 2 letters on the mat through the door, and they were 2 offers of jobs. One was for this factory, and one was for the Hastings Observer. I knew exactly where I wanted to go. I always wanted to work for a paper. Not as a journalist, because I'm not trained to be a journalist. And so I'll tell you what happened. I did go for an interview with the other one, and I'm sitting in front of 2 ladies. So can you imagine it? So you're sitting there, there are 2 women in front of you. Tell me what makes you think you're good for this job. I don't care what anybody thinks. I just tell it as it is, Marcus.
Yeah.
And what's your hobbies, Malcolm? I used to play in a band. I used to sing. Oh, so you can sing? Well, I don't think I can sing. Give us a song, Malcolm. Now, this isn't a job interview. Job interview. Give us a song, Malcolm. Really? Yes. So I went, and he's a real Nowell man sitting in his now. And I sung that kind of song. And then I turned the tables and said, over to you, girls. Oh, we can't sing. And but anyway, they gave me that job, but I didn't take that. I worked for the Hastings Observer. And they say that there's not such a thing as a free meal. Yes, there is. And I'll tell you why. Part of my job was the restaurant guide. So I was all over Sussex dining at these lovely country pubs or hotels, in the knowledge that I was writing about them, about the meal, about the staff, for the paper. So they were falling over backwards. Would you like another drink, Mr. Robinson? So it was great. And this was all paid for by the Hastings Observer. And also the White Rock Theatre. It's a big theatre in Hastings. And they have West End shows coming down from London. They have some fantastic, I interviewed a lot of these people, Christmas shows. I was doing the write-up for the paper. The downside of that is, you probably know, I write forever. I talk forever, but I also write. So in a newspaper, you've only got so much framework where you can use. So trying to get all my words into that, it's not going to happen. I had to shorten it to about that. And which I was quite annoyed about, because that takes the flavour of how that artist performed on stage. And it was a Kate Bush singer. She was good. And I interviewed her. So again, at the Hastings Observer, they were coming up to me, Malcolm, have you seen this? Have you seen that? And then I started to get phone calls from the Bexhill Observer, the Rye Observer, the Eastbourne Herald, with UFO sightings from their neck of the woods. Oh, hear that boy, Malcolm Robinson's? He works for the Hastings Observer. Ask him, he's there. And they would send photographs or send statements over. And I was like, this is good. Not only working for a paper, but having to deal with my love is chasing down UFOs, which, as you know, comprise of getting in touch with the police to see if any members of the public had reported this, airports, meteorological stations, a lot. So what a great time I had at the Observer. It was fantastic.
I mean, had you founded SPI by this point, Malcolm? I presume you had. So that...
Yeah, absolutely. SPI was 1979, right, on the back of the Bob Taylor case. And it's one of these cases which you say, why are these cases not here today? Oh, we're getting these lights in the sky. They're nothing fantastic. But that was a case that propelled me off that sceptical fence, because in 1979, I was still out there to disprove these subjects. I was still out there to say, what a load of nonsense. But when you get your face slapped, your hair pulled by nothing in a haunted house, that convinces you, you know. And the Bob Taylor case was a catalyst for my intense research into the subject. And the reason for that is interviewing the police officers, interviewing the forensic team who dealt with that case, and realizing these guys are flummoxed. These guys haven't a clue what's going on. They're as in the dark as the next person. So it was a very much an eye opener as the Taylor case, yeah.
I can believe it was. We're going to get into some of your paranormal accounts and experiences in a moment, but I'd just like to quickly rewind back and go back to music, because I understand the Beatles are particularly important to you and have been since you were young. I believe you're responsible for a Beatles plaque, and obviously I would imagine, like anyone else, you remembered where you were when Lennon died. So could you speak to me about that?
Massive Beatles fan. Thank you for asking that, Marcus.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, the Fab Four. I've always been a Beatles fan all my life, and that's what propelled me into music as well, knocking about with Sandy Crow and etc. And so I was sleeping when on the night of John Lennon got assassinated by Mark David Chapman, and there's a story about that in a minute as well. Okay. And I got a phone call about 4 o'clock in the morning. I was due up for a day shift again, starting at 6, and my mate says, Malcolm, it just came over the radio. This is 1980 was still internet, just, I think. Came over the radio, John Lennon's been shot. I've heard no chat. He says, he's been shot. So I tuned in the radio, I went, oh my God. So what I did, Marcus, was, and some of your viewers will find this funny, what I did, I got a massive big poster of the face of John Lennon and stuck it on my living room window, closed the blinds, closed every curtain in the house, and phoned my work. Hello, Malcolm Robinson here. I'm not coming in. John Lennon's been shot dead. Sack me if you want. I don't care. Put the phone down. And I thought I was going to sack myself, you know, but for some reason they didn't, you know. And but getting back to the plaque. So a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I says, well, the very, very, very first time the Beatles ever played in Scotland was at Alloa Town Hall, just a few miles from where I live. They came up, they did an audition with Larry Parnes, who was taking some bands up the north of Scotland. And the combo they had at that time was John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, he was about 14 or 15 years of age, and Tommy Moore. This is even before Pete Best, before Ringo Starr. Tommy Moore was the drummer. So they jumped in their transit van, went up to Scotland, and the very first time they ever played anywhere in Scotland was just down the road from the Alloa Town Hall. So I said, you know what? We got to commemorate this. We got to commemorate this. So how am I going to do this? I know, I've got a brass plaque, and we'll commemorate it that way. So we got this brass plaque commissioned, made massive news all over Scotland, and maybe England as well, I'm not sure. And we actually even got a postcard from MPL Productions. That's Paul McCartney's publicity group, MPL, I believe, music. And to have that, and it wasn't signed by him, it was just saying, thank you very much from all at MPL. And but that was a good wee sign for to do that. And so we actually held a Beatles party a few days later at the local Claremont Lodge Hotel. I was dressed in a pink or pinkish red Sergeant Pepper costume, the one that Ringo Starr wore. My mates, they were in the blue costume, McCartney. And I had 2 local singer-songwriters doing the Beatles. And I had my projector, which I take on my lectures, projecting through them onto the big wall behind them, all photographs of the Beatles, the early ones, black and white, for Hamburg, for the early 60s. Then we went on to Linda McCartney, Yoko. So that was on a revolving, you know, PowerPoint behind them. All the walls are covered with Beatles posters. When you go into the hotel, you get a celebrated drink. It was either a blue mini, which is a blue shot, or a yellow submarine, which is a yellow drink, you know. Yeah. And so we got a plaque there. So that's 2 plaques I've done. I've got one in Decmont Woods and one in the Beatles.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was just going to go, because this isn't the first time, or not the only time, should I say, that you've done that. You were responsible for getting this Decmont Woods plaque there, which is important, because, you know, these are historical events and they should be marked. So I wonder if you could tell me a bit about that. What did you have to go through to get that done, and why exactly did you want to do it? I know, but, you know.
Yeah. Well, basically, obviously, everybody in the world knows about Rendlesham Forest, and eventually they got signage placed there. They actually went even better. As you know, they've got this structure, this UFO craft structure in the heart of the woods at Decmont Forest. And here in Scotland, at Decmont Woods, one of Scotland's biggest cases, where's Decmont? Oh, yes, we'll have to go to that walk-in. They got lost because they've no signage. They didn't know, where is the site? Where is it? So I knew I had to do something about this. So I phoned the West Lothian council and asked if they would maybe place a commemorative plaque there as well and signage as well. Because back in 1993, with the Livingston Development Corporation, prior to the West Lothian, we managed to get a big stone boulder and a plaque on that. But we decided we want to go one better. Let's get signage posts, marker posts, way markers, UFO trail, follow this way. And so they hummed and hawed, oh, we don't know if we've got the money, we don't know if we can fund this, we don't know. Eventually, thank goodness, I tried to impress upon them the fact that people coming from all over the world to this UFO hotspot. It may sound crazy, but you're going to get traffic. You're going to get people coming over. And by golly, did they listen to me. And the signage is up there now. So you've got a big plaque next to the boulder. You've got way markers. There is a wee twist to this, a wee sad twist to this story. In the past month or so, it happens everywhere, vandalism. And one of the marker posts, the signage posts, it tells you the routes of the UFO trails. It's been forcibly taken out, smashed up and everything. And I work a lot with the media, and I've taken a number of TV celebrities up there. And the first thing we go to is the first signage. There you go, see the famous signage? Yeah. There's nothing there now. So I'm very annoyed at that. I've been speaking to the West Lothian Council, letting them know about the damage and the vandalism and saying, look, you need to get this sorted. So fingers crossed they're going to do it,
So yeah, I was aware of that. And it's like you say, it's just so needless, really. I mean, it's not even wasting any time on that. And I hope we get that sorted real quick. We really do. We're going to move on to a few serious questions. Not serious, but a little bit small serious in a moment. But I'd like to just speak about some of your life experiences in UFO and paranormal research. What if you could tell me about, bringing a down and out guy into the British UFO Research Association conference? Because that sounds like that's an interesting story.
I mean, 1981, I believe that was, and there were nothing in Scotland. I think I was only kicking about. We were on holiday at the time, but there were no UFO societies. There was very little, any groups at all. And so I used to go on my lonesome, jump on a train from Stirling Station away down to London, and Mount Royal Hotel, I think I stayed at, Mount Royal Hotel. And I would walk the streets because London, the big city, I was just a young guy still. I was amazed by this. And I'll talk to anybody. That's me. I'll talk to anybody. I'm terrible. So I saw this down and out, and I am aware that a lot of these down and outs are just characters. They're play actors. They've got houses and all the rest of it, and some of them just want to do it to see what it's like. And I could give you so many. Oh, I want to go back to the Mark David Chapman story, who shot John Lennon later on.
Oh yeah.
So this down and out was slouched against a wall, and I put some money in his wee tin, and I woke him up. Oh, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. And how's it going? How did you end up in the street, mate? How's things, And I got his life story, which was fine. I had time to kill. And I says, do you want to, what are you doing today? Oh, this is it, mate. This is it. I sit here all day hoping that somebody will feed me. Come on, I'll take you to a hotel. I'll get you a wee meal and a pint. I'm going to this conference. Conference? What conference? It's to do with UFOs. UFOs? Really? And I says, come on. And he was smelly, he was stinking, and his hair was all over the place. And so I took him and everybody knew me then, because I was still making a name for myself. So all the big wigs down in England go, that's Malcolm Robinson. Who's this guy? And so I goes in and everybody's, away from the smell and everything, But that's me. I do that. So I can't remember if I got him into the actual auditorium. I may have done. But anyway, I got him his meal, got him a wee drink, and that was it. But I just felt sorry for him, you know. I remember when I lived in London, I gave a fiver to this down and out lady. There you go. And I thank you very much. So I walks away. I walked about 500 yards. She runs after me. You give me more now? You give me more? More than £5? On your bike, you know.
Yeah.
So some of them just take liberties, you know.
Yeah, as in life, until you get good and bad wherever you go. Malcolm, you've lectured all over the place, all over the world, literally. I think you've lectured in France or to a French audience. I believe you've lectured in a prison and on a cruise ship. Can you tell me a bit about those and which stands out most for you, if any of them do? I mean, I'm sure they're all great memories, but
they're all great memories. Anybody you interview on your channel will say that people come to them. I don't go to them; they come to me. And if you get invited to go to give a talk on a cruise ship, you're not going to say, "I'm sorry, I'm going to comb my hair, I'm going to get my hair cut, and I'm going to watch Channel 4. You're going to jump at it. You're going to jump at it. So I mean, I'll start with that one first, and then I'll go back the way.
yeah.
A couple of years ago, what's his name? The TV host sadly passed away. Anyway, he invited me to go on this paranormal cruise, and I'm trying to remember the guy's name, and it wasn't just me; it was some other people as well, you know. And I'm going, oh, I'll never be able to afford this. He says, oh, don't worry, it's all expenses paid. You know, your flight from Manchester over to America, and then on board the ship, it goes off the coast of America and up to Canada and Newfoundland. All we want, Malcolm, is for you to give us 4 lectures. Oh, fella's saying that's going to be tough, you know. No. So I says, I'm trying not to sound too excited to the fella. I says, yes, that'll be fine, you know, that'll be lovely. So at that point, just before we went there was a massive storm across Scotland, Storm Irwin or something, or Ewan or something,
Right.
and it cancelled, all the trains were cancelled. All the flights were cancelled. How am I going to get from Sauchie to Manchester to get my flight? I don't drive. How am I going to get there? I had to order a taxi. I ordered a taxi and it cost me £400 to get from Scotland to Manchester just to get this flight. And we went over and we met the ship's captain, we met the crew and all that. And I did my 4 talks, and one of them was on Halloween, so that was all ghosty stuff and everything. And it was wonderful. You know, these gigs don't come about too often. And when they happen, you've got to do it. The same way when I got the invite to speak in America. I'm the very first Scotsman to lecture in America. And that was a good friend of mine, Ross Hemsworth. Bless you, Ross. He was heavily into UFOs. He was making a name for himself with ghost detectives and that himself. And he was a lecturer and speaker and presenter. And he got me the gig in America, which I do thank him for. And to be over there and you know, see America. And we flew into McCarran Airport next to Las Vegas. And I was so excited. My first time in America, and it was late at night. Everybody in the bus was sleeping, including the driver, because he went off the road. And at the side of the road, you've got these little grids. So you hear a... So that woke him up, and he pulled the thing back, you know, and they almost had everybody killed before we got there. And so to lecture in America was incredible. It was a big complex. I forget the name of it wasn't the Flamingo Hotel, something like that. So upstairs was all the lecture halls, and that downstairs was all the gaming rooms, and there were all these zombies, these people. Glassy eyes, and it was like a wee stick that they had charged me money, and they popped it into the slot machine, and all they're doing the whole night is just playing slots, you know, and they were like glassy eyed. It was incredible. So that was good. The Shotts Penitentiary was a kind of weird one, because this is a penitentiary separate to a prison. It held 8 of the most hardened criminals in Scotland, the nastiest people of society. And one of these guys who had murdered 3 guys of one night had read in a Scottish newspaper about Daft Malcolm and his UFOs. And he said to the governor of the prison, I want that boy to come into prison and talk to us about these UFOs in Bonnybridge. And the prison governor went, oh dear, I don't know about that. I suppose it wouldn't do any harm. So he agreed it. So prior to that lecture, I met the prison governor, and he took me through the do's and the don'ts, and I went into this special unit. Wow, God, and there was offshoots. It was like a hexagon, 50p piece. And he's still there. I just had a phone call come through there.
No, you're still here. I haven't got you.
Okay, just had something come through there. And so we went into, there was a pool table, and I went into this workshop. It was a woodwork class. So there were chisels. There were all these sharp implements. And I said to this guy, who I was quite fearful of, does that not entice you to maybe use that on the prison officers? Oh no, Malcolm, we know we've got it easy here. We're away from the main prison. Look at it. It's cushy, pool tables, badminton, table tennis. Yeah. We've got it cushy. It was an experiment which started off in I think it was the 60s or 70s by the Scottish criminal Jimmy Boyle. He was one of the first guys to do this special unit. Anyway, come the night of the talk, you go through this metal detector like an airport security. It'll ping if you've got any coins in your pocket. So you take your coins and that. And I met up with the guy who had invited me to talk. So the prison chaplain was there, and all the prisoners were there. Their wives were there, and their wives had more tattoos going up their arms than the men did, you know. Right. Even their tongues were tattooed. So that was kind of scary. I mean, I've lectured on a bus. I've lectured on the way to Bonnybridge, where I'm standing at the front of the bus, holding the front of the bus rail. And there was a screen above me, and I'm showing footage of UFOs, and I'm talking. The bus was packed. This was for the Edinburgh International Science Festival, running a bus from Edinburgh to Bonnybridge. So I'm talking away. Unbeknownst to me, Marcus, there was a car who had tried to get in front of our bus, which he did very quickly. And of course, our bus had to brake. So I went head over heels and fell down the stairwell of this bus, and I'm lying in a heap. And quite rightly, the bus is all laughing. You know, you got to, I would have laughed, you know. So I'm dusting myself down. I'm okay. And I carried on with my talk, you know. So this, and then when I was speaking in France, in Strasbourg, it was like a big amphitheatre, a big auditorium, you know. Oh. And this French lady says, Malcolm, we will have to speak very slow. We have French listeners, and they've all got their French headsets on. So this lady was going to translate in a booth to the side of the stage. I'm on stage. She's in this glass booth. She's listening to me, and I had to talk slow so that she could say it in French to this big audience. Wow. Like I'm doing just now, I'm talking fast. So once I get into my stride, you know, she's going, too fast. So I had to kind of, you know, slow down. And then when I was it Strasbourg as well? Was that a different one? Yeah, they were a demonstration by none other than the Raelian movement. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Right, yeah.
If anybody wants to check out the Raelian movement, kind of off-the-wall society, shall we say, no disrespect. So I went out for a cigarette. I was smoking then. I don't smoke now. And I went out. Before I went out, you going out there, Malcolm? Yeah, I'm just going out there. Don't go out there. Why? Look, the demonstration, the banners and everything. Nobody tells me what to do, you know. So, okay. So he went away and I went out. Are you one of the speakers? And this big black guy said, you one of the speakers? Yeah. So he started to verbally abuse him. And I went, mate, whoa. I'm with you. What are you trying to say? We just want the Raelian movement to have a voice. We always get blacklisted. We never get a chance to show what we can do at these talks. And yet the guy had a point. Whether he was right or wrong, he had a point. Whoa, mate, I'm not going to argue with you here. You're right what you're saying. I'll have a word with the organiser, but I doubt very much there's time to slot you in. Oh, would you? That's fantastic. Lovely. That's great. Shaking hands. Oh, thank you, Mr. Robinson. So I went back in and I spoke to the organiser, but there were no chance. These guys were going to go in at the 11th hour on a pre-plan with Stanton Friedman and Jesse Marcel Jr. and Nick Pope was there as well. Right. There were no chance these guys were going to get in. But I tried to fight their corner because everybody has a right to say what they have to say within reason, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Malcolm, this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. It really has. I mean, we should probably look to wrap it up, but there's two more questions I'd like to ask you. And they kind of relate to each other, so I'll ask them both together. First of all, has there ever been a time, and I'm sure there will have been, but I mean, has there ever been a time that you've been really not just scared, but frightened, terrified, that you maybe think, I shouldn't have got involved in this? And off the back of that, do you ever sit, and especially keeping in mind football and the music and things of that nature, do you ever sit there and ever regret the path you've taken and wish you had maybe gone left instead of right and gone with music? And that speaks to me about that. I think that's a good place to wrap this up.
Well, thanks very much. And thanks again for having me on the show to just let the viewers know the other side of Malky Robinson, the other side of who I truly am, you know. You mentioned there if I've ever been scared. Of course, yes. I mean, certain investigations, you do get scared, you know, things that happen. I mean, when I got my hair pulled by nothing and then I got slapped across the face by nothing, that's scary. It is really scary, you know. And and the reason they're scary is because I want to put myself in that ballpark. I want to be in that haunted house. I don't want to sit in the house and read about it. Get out there and do it. So we're no heroes, you know. Some people might think we're a hero, but we're not. So I do get scared. But you go in trying to disprove it. You go into any haunted house to try and disprove it. You go into any UFO investigation to try and disprove it. Right, prove it to me. And in a nice way, obviously, you have to be careful with what you say. You have to dot the I's, cross the T's. What could cause that UFO sign? Why is somebody seeing that ghost? So that's the best part with it. Is when it comes to regrets, that's a good question. Now, when it comes to regrets, should I have went left with the music or kept right with where I am with the paranormal? I don't suppose I have any regrets. Now, I don't think so, because I honestly believe, and this may sound big headed, and I don't want it to be, I honestly believe in each and every one of us are put here for a purpose. We have a purpose in life, and I honestly believe that my purpose in life is to just look over that fence and see what's in this spooky world of the paranormal. No regrets. I mean, I had my grandchildren here before I came on the show, and little Daniel, he'll be 10 in August, he says, "Grandad," because he knew I used to play in a band, go and learn me how to play guitar. So I got my acoustic guitar, which I very rarely play. I've got it sitting over there. And he put it down his wee legs and his wee body, and he's trying to do his chords. And I said, "I'll take you ages to do this, Daniel, but you will learn. Do you want to learn?" "Oh, yes, Grandad, yes." So that's my next task. Forget chasing UFOs. Is to learn my my grandchild, how to play guitar. But no regrets, and I do get scared, yes.
Excellent. Well, Malcolm, it's been an eye opener. It's been fascinating. Thank you ever so much for speaking with me. You know, as I say, I could speak to you all afternoon. Have you got anything coming up, Malcolm, that you want to speak about before we sign off, or anything that you want to promote? Because you're a busy guy, I know that.
Yeah, I want everybody in the world, including your next door neighbour, to buy my new book, which is the Bonnie Bridge UFO Enigma. It's out now on Amazon, folks. It's co-authored with Ron Halliday. Next year, next September, SPI will be holding a very, very first own personal conference. It's either going to be in Stirling or Edinburgh. Definitely September the 12th, Stirling or Edinburgh next year. I'm also working on my 14th book, which is going to be probably called UFO Case Files of Great Britain, Volume 1. And the reason I'm saying Volume 1 is, honestly, my PC is solid with case files given to me by people. I'm also bringing to bear paper files pre-internet, letters sent to me by people saying, "I saw this and I've got to digest." Well, okay, let's get back to them, find out the truth. So I'm going through this papers, all these old cases, and then going into the new stuff. I've got so much. I'll need Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3. So that's what I'm working on. And I love it. I'm on a roll. I love it.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I look forward to that. I'm sure everyone out there will be looking forward to that too. Malky, thank you very much. That just leaves me to say thank you guys for tuning in and watching. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and make sure you check out the ANOMONY-PROJECT-podcast.com for further news and articles. Until next time, goodbye and take care.